Begin the current Daf in Masech Shabbos Daf Zayin. Begin 12 lines down from the top of the Yamid. Rashi is co-sponsored by Kazakh and Cheskel. Torah Anytime, Daf Chaim. We thank everyone joining us on Zoom. So the Gemara, some of the ideas we're going to speak about in today's Daf is regarding the halachas of Tumas Begadim, these complex laws relating to a garment, Mekabel Tumah, regarding that the obvious, which is mentioned in the Torah by Negoim, we said that wool and linen most definitely are susceptible to Tumah because it mentioned Semer Pishtim. The question, however, becomes regarding other materials, regarding its susceptibility to Tumah. Additionally, the minimum size to contract Tumas Tzaras, which is where it explicitly mentions wool and linen, and is that specifically regarding Tumas Negoim, and how does that relate to other materials? The two sizes that we keep on mentioning in the sugya is 3x3 tfachim, which is the more obvious one, and then there's a bigger chiddush, even is 3x3 etzbais, which is obviously smaller than 3x3 tfachim. To say that that's going to be Mekabel Tumah is a bigger chiddush. That's the other size we mentioned in the sugya. Additionally, some of the other ideas we're going to be mentioning is regarding the laws of tzitzis, as that relates to the obligation of putting on the strings on garments of wool and linen. And what's the halacha? Is it even if the garment is made of other materials? This we're going to be speaking about tzitzis on a ksus laila, regarding the garment of a blind person, and or on a ksus summa, regarding garments used at nighttime or nighttime garments. So we continue the discussion from the previous Daf. And as again we're on Daf Zayin and Medalef, 12 lines down at the top of the Yamid. We're Amar Baya. We'll start with the Gemara and we'll show how this relates back to the previous Daf. He says like this. He says, "Hi Tana de Rabbi Shmuel." The Tana de Rabbi Shmuel that we mentioned on the previous Daf. Now we're going to have to keep in mind, we're discussing Abaye here. We're going to be discussing Rava. This is going to relate directly back to the discussion from the previous Daf, and that is l'shitasam, according to their opinion, how they explained the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. We started off the sugi yesterday, with a teaching of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and Abaye said Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and Tana de Rabbi Shmuel are saying the same thing. Now, so with that said, and the reason why we said it's the same thing, because both of them are saying that garments not from Tzemer Pishtim are not Mekabel Tumah. It's only Tzemer Pishtim that's Mekabel Tumah as a garment. All other ones are not Mekabel Tumah. So on that continues the Gemara. Haitan Rabbi Shmuel that says it's specifically Tzemer Pishtim, where he was clearly, the question was machlekes between Abaye and Rabbi regarding Shimon and Elazar. His words could have been interpreted as only by shalosh etzbais, it's not Mekabel Tumah, which is the more stringent shiur, but maybe shlosh tfachim, which is a larger, more simpler halacha. Maybe there it is going to be Mekabel Tumah. But the Tana Rabbi Shmuel was clearly that he said, it says in the pasuk Tzemer Pishtim. Whenever the Torah says Ho v'nemer begadim b'Torah stam, his words were throughout the Torah. There's many halachas. It only says the word beged. What does beged mean? What does the garment mean? Oh, one time the Torah told us by Negoim it's Tzemer Pishtim. So afkol, wherever mentioned in the Torah, beged, it refers to Tzemer Pishtim. So Abaye says this time the Rabbi Shmuel that says that it's specifically that only with Tzemer Pishtim, but other materials are not Mekabel Tumah. Mapik me'idach Tana Rabbi Shmuel. He comes to exclude from the logic of the other Tana Rabbi Shmuel, which we're going to quote right now, that disagrees, that actually does include other garments for the Tumah of Shratzim. The Tani, the Rabbi Shmuel, like we learned in another, so this yeshiva, we had the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel, they taught many different brises. So Abaye is saying that the brise we mentioned the previous day from that yeshiva, there's another brise that they taught over there that is contradictory. Why? Because the Brisa says like this. It says in the pasuk by the Tumah of Shratzim. Shratzim is a dead sheretz, certain types of dead bugs. When they fall on something, when it touches a garment, it's going to become tumah. So it says in the pasuk, a beged is going to become tumah. Now, had it only said the word beged, so ainli ela beged temer pishtim. So I would only know, as we said by Negoim, it says garment. It means a garment of tzemer, which tzemer, as Taisa explains, we'll say in a moment, means the wool of lambs, or pishtim and linen, which is from the flax plant. That's what I would know what beged means to say. So I would know sheretz can only mitame a garment of tzemer pishtim. Minayin l'rabba semer gemalim. How do I know to include also the wool of camels? Which Taisa wonders, what do you mean? The wool, camel wool is wool. Why do you need to include it? So he says no, because regularly when you say the word tzemer, it means of lambs. But camels are not called tzemer, it's called tzemer gemalim. And also all the other tzemer that we're coming to include, since they have what's called a secondary name, it's not the primary, and therefore you wouldn't know it from when you say tzemer pishtim. So how do I know to include the camel wool, the tzemer aronovim, and the rabbit wool, and neitza shalizim, which are called the pluckings of the goat. The reason why they're called the pluckings is because they don't shear the wool like they do like a sheep. They just pluck it, they pull it off. Or vahashirin, or silk vakelech, which is a different type of a silk. It's from the let's say the cocoon, from the not such good part. Vasrikin, or the corded silk. How do I know that these garments made from other types of fabrics are also going to have the tumah of shratzim? Tamalema says this Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, because it says in the parasha of shratzim, it doesn't just say beged, it says oy beged. The word oy is unnecessary, it's an extra word, to tell you to include all these other types of garments also that they're going to be mekabel tumah as tumas begadim. So you see, says Abaya, that we have two different Tanit Rabbi Shmuels. We have two different braces. The first one we mentioned on the other Daf said any other material is not mekabel tumah. Whereas we just brought another Tanit Rabbi Shmuel that says from the word oy beged by shratzim that we're coming to say that other materials are mekabel tumah. So you see that it's a machlekes. Now, Rav Amar, he says no, it's not true. He says that they're actually saying the same thing. Why? He explains. Ki lesle lahach Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, the first one that we quote on the previous daf. When did that Tanit Rabbi Shmuel say that you don't have bishar begadim, my other garments? By the tumah of shratzim, that it's not going to have tumas begadim. That's only by shalish al shalish. That's only by 3 by 3 finger breadths. That's what we say yilmat sasim in amafurish. So we learn now when it says in the Torah beged, when it's unspecified, we learn it out from the specific of Negayim to say that, Negayim it says only Tzemer Pishtim, so by Tumas Shiratzim also it's only going to be Tzemer Pishtim. Yeah, but for what are we saying it's only going to be Tzemer Pishtim? For the most stringent shear of 3 by 3 finger breadth. But Shleisha, but the larger shear of 3 by 3 Tfachim regarding Shiratzim, says Rav Islay, that is applicable by other garments, other fabrics for the laws of Tumah. Why? Because they're included from the drasha of Oy Beged that Rava mentioned on the top of the summit. That it says, Oy Beged, which is an extra word that we just mentioned in this previous brisa of the second Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. He says the first Tanit Rabbi Shmuel agrees to this Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. Oy Beged is a ribui, but it's somewhere in the middle. It's excluded because you do learn out from the goyim that's only Tzemer Pishtim regarding the smaller shir of shalish. So Rav explains like this. He says the first Tanit Rabbi Shmuel that says other materials are not mekabel tumah. Yes, that's by 3 by 3. It's boys. This Tanit Rabbi Shmuel that says no other materials are included from my beged is regarding 3 by 3 tvachim. So therefore, he's saying the two Tanit Rabbi Shmuels are saying the same thing. So they're not disagreeing. However, on that, the Gemara asks, how could you say this? Because Rav himself is the one who said that Shleisha b'shar begadim. One has to, what's called halt cup over here, and this is the Gemara's question from the previous daf. Rav himself was quoted as saying, in the discussion in the previous daf, Abaya said that Tanit Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shimon Lazar were saying the same thing. He said that both of them hold that any garment that's not from Tzemer Pishtim is not going to be mekabel tumah. On that, Rabbi says, no, they're disagreeing. He says there's a difference. The Tanit Rabbi Shmuel said, and this is what the Gemara is coming to say. He said, Shleisha b'shar begadim, when it's 3 by 3 tvachim by other garments, Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar islay. He holds that there is going to be tumas begadim, as we were medayik in his words. The words Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar had used in the brayso of the previous stuff was shalish al shalish. Anything that's yotzim in the 8 is not going to be mekabel tumah, which we said yotzim in the 8 was not specific. It meant any other fabric besides Tzemer Pishtim is not going to be mekabel tumah. He said by shalish al shalish, but Rabbi said, wait a second, that's shalish al shalish. But shleisha al shleisha, which by tvachim that he would hold is mekabel tumah. That's not like Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. Tanit Rabbi Shmuel was saying anything, any garment that's not Tzemer Pishtim, no matter what the size, is not mekabel tumah. So therefore, he said only in Rabbi Lazar that he holds as 3 by 3 tvachim. But he said L'tan Rabbi Shmuel Leslie that he doesn't have it even by 3 by 3 tvachim. So how do we understand what he's saying over here? That the two Tan Rabbi Shmuel are saying the same thing because the first one's only excluding from 3 by 3 it's boys, and the second one is including 3 by 3 tvachim. So therefore they could be harmonious. It's not true. He himself said in the previous daf that the first Tan Rabbi Shmuel holds it's not going to be even by 3 by 3 tvachim. It's only Rabbi Shimon Lazar who's going to hold this interpretation what he's saying. So the Gemara Hadbe Rava Mahi. Rava retracted from that statement he said from the previous daf, that he actually now says that Tanit Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shimon Lazar are saying the same thing. Now, as Rashi explained, not the way Abaye said it. Abaye said also in the previous stuff, they're saying the same thing. But Abaye said they're both saying the same thing because he said that they all agree that there's no tumah whatsoever, no matter the size. That's not what Rav is saying now. He's saying the same thing, but he's saying that because by both of them, by other begadim regarding tumah shratzim, you're going to say that there's, meaning both Tanur Rabbi Shmuels are going to hold, like we're saying over here, that it's not going to have the tumah of 3 by 3 etzbais, but it will have the tumah of 3 by 3 tfachim. As Taisa explains, that why is Rava retracting from a statement from the previous daf? It's because he does not want to have an internal contradiction in the Tanur Rabbi Shmuel. So therefore he's retracting from the statement he said in the previous daf and not from the statement he's saying over here. So although originally he said he had no problem saying you have machlekes Reb Shimon Elazar and Tanur Rabbi Shmuel, fine. But now that we have another brayso Tanur Rabbi Shmuel that's contradicting this Tanur Rabbi Shmuel, he wanted to resolve it, and therefore he retracted from a statement in the previous daf, and he says that no, actually Reb Shimon Elazar and Tanur Rabbi Shmuel are saying the same thing. That it's not makabel tumah, but what does that mean? Not makabel tumah, not makabel tumah at not at all, but only regarding 3 by 3 tzbais, as we see from the second Tanur Rabbi Shmuel that holds that it is going to be included for the laws of tumah by other begadim by 3 by 3 tvach. That's one approach. If you want, you could say, this second teaching that we're bringing over here actually is not Rava. You're right, Rava in the previous daf said that Tanur Rabbi Shmuel holds is totally excluded from the laws of tumah, even by 3 by 3 tvachim, which is obviously not like this Tanur Rabbi Shmuel over here. But this that we're saying that both Tanur Rabbi Shmuels are saying the same thing is actually Rav Papa Amara. It was Rav Papa, who as Taisa explains, why we're saying Rav Papa, because he's a student of Rava. And a lot of times when he said a teaching, you weren't sure if he's saying it from himself or from his teacher, so they thought it was from Rava, his teacher, because oftentimes he would say from his Rebbe, it was actually his own teaching. And he was coming to explain that both of the Tanur Rabbi Shmuels are saying the same thing, and the Tana of the Reisha, meaning the Tanur Rabbi Shmuel of the previous daf, holds that there is going to be tumah shratzim by other garments, which as the Girsa of Rashi is, that the next words are with a daled. Dira Papa Amma, because Rav Papa gives a different interpretation to resolve the two Tanur Rabbi Shmuels in a different way than we said up until now. Av Kol, meaning the first Tanur Rabbi Shmuel from the previous daf, he said like this. He says, look, it says in the Torah everywhere beged, 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 beged. What does beged mean? It's only one time in the Torah that the Torah tells us what it means. By the Parashat of Negoim, by a beged, it says by a beged of tzemer pishtim. So it specifies what a beged is. So his words are av kol. So too everywhere when it says beged stam, it means tzemer pishtim. So Rav Papa explains, he's not coming to explain, let's say, regards to whenever it mentions in the Torah a beged unspecified regarding the laws of tumah. Because regarding the laws of tumah, let's say by shratzim, most definitely Tanur Rabbi Shmuel would hold that other regadim are makabel tumah, because they're included, like this second Tanur Rabbi Shmuel saying from oy beged. They're not disagreeing. Other begadim are going to be makabel tumah regarding laws of tumah. So what is he saying? Af kol, wherever it says beged, it's not other begadim, and not other garments, not other fabrics. It's only temer pishtim. He's coming to qualify a different halacha. It's la'asuya klaim. Actually, that's the halacha l'maisa. Klaim is only by a beged of tzemer or pishtim. When he says av kol, it means whenever it mentions a garment of a mixture of different fabrics, that's what it's coming to tell you, that a beged of klaim is shatnez. Now, so therefore, Rashi is a little bit lengthy here, and therefore he says, now the interpretation of Rav Papa is, yes, the two Tanur Rabbi Shmuels are not contradictory one from the other. Now, the interpretation that was being said was not Rava, who says that the Tanur Rabbi Shmuels are not disagreeing, but it was Rav Papa. But, as Rashi explains, we're not going to say the way we had set up until now when we thought it was Rava. When we interpreted the two different brises, because we thought it was Rava, so we had to say, to understand, to relate, because they're both talking about the laws of Tumah, we had to say, it must be that the first brisa that was excluding other, let's say, Tumah Shratzim from the laws of other garments from the laws of Tumah, that's by 3 etzbais. And the second brisa is saying that it's included for Shleisha Tvachim. But now that we're saying it's Rav Papa, and we're saying it's regarding the laws of Klaim, when he says, Loi mapek haitana me'idach Tanur Rabbi Shmuel, it's a different interpretation. It means something else. Yes, they're not contradictory, but for a different reason. Because when the first Tana said Av Kol, wasn't talking about the laws of Tumah, talking about the laws of Kalayim. When we thought it was Rava, we had to make a differentiation, because since Av Kol was coming to include Tumah of Shratzim, so therefore we had to say, wait a second, so they obviously are contradictory, because the first Bryce is saying that all garments are not going to have tumah if it's a different fabric. And the second one is saying it is. So we have to say, afkol means to say we're excluding it, even by other tumas, we're excluding other garments from shalish al shalish, like the laws of Negoim. But then the second brayso is telling you, oy bega is coming to include, that's for shalish tvachim. So although that we don't have a tumah of other garments by Negoim, and the reason is, as we said in the previous time, because we have two mi'utim, it says tzemer pishtim, it says tzemer pishtim, we excluded from shleisha tvachim, we excluded from shleisha tzbois, but by the parsha of shratzim, there is a ribuy of oy beged, but for what are we including it? For shleisha tvachim. But the first brayso is saying we're excluding it from shalish tzbois. But now when we're saying it's rapapa, we don't have to make any differentiations as Rashi explains, because when we're including by the parsha of shratzim with oy beged to include other begadim, so then we're going to include it for all the laws that we have by tzemer pishtim is going to be the same thing by other fabrics too. For shalish tzbois and by shalish tvachim, because you don't have to make any spalten, any more differentiations, because the first time Rabbi Shlomo wasn't even talking about a comparison to the laws of Tumah. It was talking about regarding the laws of Klein. So that's what, as we have drawn over here, that according to Papa, it's talking about a whole different halacha. The first time Rabbi Shlomo was saying other materials that it's not going to apply to, it's not that other materials not going to have the law of being makabel Tumah. It's talking about the other materials are not going to be applicable for the laws of shatness. That's going to be a mixture of only wool and linen. And the second time the Rabbi Shlomo was including other materials was regarding the laws of makabel tumah. Yeah, that we could even say that's by 3 b'thread spice. But now the Gemara asked the obvious question: Klayim? You're telling me that the first time Rabbi Shlomo said, it says everywhere in the Torah, beged. In one place it says what it means by Negoyim, by Tzaras, it means Tzemer Pishtim. Avkol, so wherever it says beged, which he's saying, what does it mean wherever? It means Klayim, when you have a forbidden mixture. It also means Tzemer Pishtim. I need a Avkol, I need a Mamatzinu to tell you that Klayim is only by Tzemer Pishtim? Klayim behed yiksivi bey, it explicitly says in the Torah and Devarim that it's Tzemer Pishtim. Because the Torah says, Leisil b'shatnus, don't wear shatnus. Tzemer pishim yachtav, wool and linen together. So I don't need a miyut of the afkol. I know it from a pasuk in the Torah. Says the Gemara, no. I would have thought to say, when is it only tzemer pishim? There's two ways of violating wearing a garment of climate. There's the wearing it, dressing up with it, and then there's what's called halal, which is putting it over you. And there's two different psukim actually in the Torah. So I would have thought to say, when is it specifically wool and linen, is like this parsha, of this pasuk of like silbash, of wearing it. That's tzemer pishtim. Aballah, but the other pasuk that regarding just covering oneself with a cloak of tzemer pishtim, I would say actually not just tzemer pishtim, culture meaning also every two types of fabrics are going to be forbidden. Therefore, we needed to tell you, Kamash Malan, from the limud on the goyim, afkol, to say that no, climb is only going to be tzemer pishtim. But the Gemara refutes that right away. It says, Valav kavachaymehu, isn't it a kavachaymer? Uma lavisha, if wearing something, putting on the jacket of shatness. The komisani kuli gufi meklayim, where your whole body gets the pleasure of the klayim, you're getting dressed in it. The pasuk says explicitly, tzemer pishtim in. It's only if it's a combination of wool and linen, then it's a violation. But other fabrics not. Halal like kosher. So isn't it obviously then you're not even having so much pleasure, you're just covering yourself? Of course, it's going to be limited to tzemer pishtim. So the Gemara concludes, Eli, you're right. Rav Papa bedusihi. Rav Papa is an error. It's on the outside. I mean to say this cannot be the resolution of the contradictions of the Tana Rabbi Shmuel, because you cannot say the first Tana Rabbi Shmuel, it wasn't talking about Tumah, and therefore it's not contradicted by the second. You're right. The second Tana Rabbi Shmuel that we're quoting here on our daf says that other garments, the laws of shratzim, are going to be even by other fabrics. The first one was saying it's only afkol was only by afkol is talking about klayim. Klayim, you have explicit pasuk. So the Gemara has rejected that, meaning the first answer in the Gemara says Rava. Who said this teaching? So we said it was Rava. So that contradicts Rava in the previous stuff. So either we said Rava retracted from that, or we said you could say that it was his student Rav Papa. Well, what did Rav Papa say? So either you could say how we originally said Rava said it, which was to make a shpal, to make a differentiation. But the Gemara says no, that was only for Rava we had to say that. What was Rav Papa's teaching? Rav Papa's teaching was that the afko is Tomah Klayim. And therefore that doesn't contradict. Yeah, Klayim is only by tzemer pishtim, but the laws of Tumah, by Shratzim, let's say, would apply, because from Ibeg it would apply to even other fabrics. The Gemara says that can't be the resolution, because that you can't tell me you're teaching me Klayim when that's a pasuk in the Torah. So rather the Gemara gives a different approach. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Kama, he says, to say why it's not a contradiction, the two brises, again, the two Tana Rabbi Shmuels seem to be contradictory. The first one seems to say it's only by tzemer pishtim in all halachas of Tumah, because we're comparing to Negoim. And the second Tana Rabbi Shlomo that we quoted today is saying Oy Beged is including other, the wool of camels, of rabbits, all these other fabrics are included for laws of Tumah. How do we resolve it? So Rav Nachman Yitzchak gives a similar approach to Rav Papa, but different. He says, Av Kol, when it says in the first Tana Rabbi Shlomo, Av Kol, it's not coming to include for laws of Tumah. Meaning laws of Tumah would apply to other fabrics. When it's saying also wherever it says Beged, it means only Tzemer Pishtim, as we continue to Beis, that's Lasuyi Tzitzis. That's coming to include the law of tzitzis, to say that the law of tzitzis is not going to be obligated only if you're wearing a garment of wool and linen. But it's not coming to exclude the laws of Tumah by other begadim, and therefore that's why it's not contradictory. The first time Rabbi Shmuel was saying Tzemer Pishtim is limited for what? What beged? When it says the entire beged of that you're going to have to put on tzitzis, that's only going to be Tzemer Pishtim. But he agrees to the second time Rabbi Shmuel that the laws of Tumah, like by Shratzim, we do include other begadim in the laws of Tumah. On that asked the Gemara. Tzitzis asked the same type of question that we asked on Rav Papa. Behediksiv, it's explicit pasuk. It says Nevarm Leisil b'shatnis Tzemer Pishtim. Don't wear shatnis, which is a mixture of wool and linen. Uksiv in the next pasuk continues and says Gedilim Tasalach, that twisted thread you should make for you. Which, what does that tell you? It tells you that from these fabrics of Tzemer Pishtim, the way we read it is like when it says Leisil b'shatnis Tzemer Pishtim Yachtav, period. That's talking about the prohibition of shatnez. The next pasuk tells you, Gedilam Ta'asalach, that you should make twisted threads as strings for al arbis kamfik on the four corners of your garment, asher tachas where you cover it. Now, you could read it as if it's one pasuk. Tzemer Pishtim Yachtav, Gedilam Ta'asalach. So that's telling you that we have, actually that's going to be in the moment with Rava. But first, what Renach Yitzchak is telling you is that what do you see from here? It's coming to tell you that you make the tzitzis from a garment on Tzemer Pishtim, because that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you of Leisil Shat. When it talks about shatness, it mentions Tzemer Pishtim. And the next pasuk says that you make tzitzis. So the Gemara is asking, the Gemara is assuming that it's coming to tell you that what type of garment should you make? You should make a garment of Tzemer Pishtim. That's where you should make tzitzis on. When you're having Tzemer Pishtim, either one or the other, then you make tzitzis strings. So you see explicitly, the way the Gemara is understanding right now, that the pasuk is telling you that it's only for a garment of Tzemer Pishtim that you put on tzitzis. Why do I need to have a afkol to tell you that the biblical obligation of tzitzis is only by a garment of Tzemer Pishtim? So that the Gemara says, no, Sagadai the Kirava. You would have thought to say like Rava. In other words, you would have thought to say that we don't expound the smuchim regarding the laws of the garment, what we call the talis, which what Rav Nachman Yitzchak, the Gemara was asking on him. They're saying, what do you mean? You know what type of garment has tzitzis, because the two pesukim are near each other. It says, so from a garment of Tzemer Pishtim, next pasuk Gedilim Taslach, you should make tzitzis, but not any other cloak. If you're wearing silk, if you're wearing cotton, then you're not going to have the halacha of wearing tzitzis. And that says the Gemara, no. You would have thought to expound regarding the laws of tzitzis, meaning, when it says Gedilim Taslach, that is, the tzitzis strings should be from Tzemer Pishtim, and not from other fabrics, as Rava expounds, because, as just to point out what we're discussing over here, Menachem Yitzchak is saying the Avkol of Tana Rabbi Shmuel was that other materials, not that it's not going to be Tumah, it's that for tzitzis, the halacha of putting on tzitzis is only going to be on four-cornered garments of wool and linen. So the Gemara says, what's the chiddush? The Gemara says, of course, that's what the pasuk is saying. It's talking about the garment of Tzemer Pishtim regarding shatnez. Then it says Gedilim Taslach, that tzitzis string should only be on Tzemer Pishtim. So the Gemara says no, because I would have thought to say, like Rava, that as we're going to shortly quote his teaching, that he says the law of tzitzis is on all garments, meaning of all materials. Why? And this is what we were saying before, that we would have thought to say like Rava, and therefore we needed Rav Nachman Yitzchak to say the Avkol, because the Rava posed the following contradiction. On the one hand, there's a pasuk in Midbar that says, a famous pasuk, it says that v'nasnu al tzitzis, they should put on the tzitzis hakanaf of the corner of the garment a psil techelis, a thread of blue wool, which simply understood, we're coming to tell you that besides all the white strings, you should also put another blue string. But the problem that Rava has with this is that the word kanaf is superfluous, it's extra. Why? I already mentioned that we're talking about al kamfei bigdeim, on the corner of the garment. It should have just written, v'nosnu al hatzitzis, don't say the word hakanaf, on the tzitzis, the other ones, they should go ahead and put psil techelis, a blue string of wool. So why is it hakanaf? So says Rava, obviously the word hakanaf is coming to tell you that min kanaf, that what type of tzitzis strings should you be putting? the same type of fabric as the kanaf, as the corner of the garment, meaning of the talis of the garment should be the tzitzis strings. So that's what it sounds like it's saying, that the tzitzis of the kanaf should be, if let's say the garment is silk, so the tzitzis should be silk. So you see that he's saying that from the nasnu al tzitzis hakanav, which this word seems to be unnecessary, you could just say nasnu al tzitzis psil tchelis, because he already said we're talking about kamfet big dayim. So hakanav is coming to tell you min kanaf, the tzitzis must be the same material as the garment. So that means to say that the halacha is for all types of strings as long as it's the same as the garment. Now, however, there's another passage that we mentioned before. It says semer pishtim yachtov. It says wool and linen together. That's shatnez. Then the next passage continues gedilim taslach, that you should make tzitzis strings. But that sounds like, as we mentioned before, you could read it together. Semer pishtim yachtov gedilim taslach. That sounds like that actually the tzitzis strings should be made from semer pishtim. So how do we resolve this contradiction? Are the tzitzis supposed to be the same as the garment, or should the tzitzis strings be made out of wool and linen, not the same material as the garment? So okay, it's how so? So Rabbi says like this, and it's actually the halacha l'maisa. Tzemer or pishtim, by wool and linen strings, patron, they exempt a garment of four corners, bein b'minan, whether it's the same type of garment. So let's say we're wearing a cotton garment. So the halacha is that wool and linen strings, and the custom is to use wool, will exempt whether it's the same type of fabric. Let's say the material of the tzitzis of the garment is wool. Bein shaleb, meaning whether it's not the same type. So if someone's wearing a cotton garment, so the wool linen, the wool tzitzis will exempt it. And this is also the halacha but sharmin. But when you have a different type of fabric, let's say wearing cotton, so b'min and patron, then it's only going to exempt the tzitzis if you're wearing the same type of, sharminin is the tzitzis. But other types of, let's say you have cotton tzitzis, b'mina and patron is only going to exempt if it's cotton talis, cotton garment. Shalai b'mina and patron, but it's not going to exempt the cotton tzitzis, let's say on a wool garment. You cannot exempt it with other ones. So essentially what Rav is saying is that it's not a contradiction. Yes, when do we say min kanaf must be the same material as the garment? That's when it's some other types of materials. Any other material besides semer pishtim, it's, let's say, cotton, is only going to exempt when it's the same type of garment. When are we saying that the tzitzis strings are semer pishtim, is saying for all types of garments, it's going to exempt. So it's not a contradiction, it depends for what. Semer pishtim, we're saying, are universal. That's what we're learning from the pasuk of semer pishtim. But hakanaf min kanaf is coming to tell you that whatever type of fabric it is, you could use that fabric for the tzitzis strings. Oh, so says the Gemara, so you would have thought to say, like Rava, that he says, hakanaf is coming to tell you that you don't expound the psukim near each other to tell you that to exempt other garments, meaning we had asked the question, we said, Rav Nachman Yitzchak, what do you tell me afkol for to exclude other garments from the laws of tzitzis? What do you mean? It's explicit pasuk, tzemer pishtim yachtav, and then gedim tazlach, which tells you only when the garment is tzemer pishtim is the achiv of tzitzis. And that we said no, because we would have thought to say like Rava. Rava tells you that you don't say that the psukim near each other comes to exempt other garments, because he says no, most definitely they are chayv in tzitzis when it's at least using the tzitzis strings of the same garment itself. And actually, Taisa says the halacha does follow like Rava, which is the halacha l'maisa, but that other types of fabrics are chayv in deraisa. That's if you're wearing a talis of cotton, that there is going to be an obligation. But for the interpretation of Nachman Yitzchak, you would have thought to say like Rava, Kamash Malan, that's what we need to say, that from the Afkol, that not to expound Hakanov the way Rava does. Rava says other garments are going to be biblically obligated in tzitzis, because he has a contradiction. And he says, so what type of tzitzis strings are going to be exempting? Is it only wool and linen? Or is it even other fabrics? So he said, depends. Wool and linen will exempt any type of fabric. What do we learn from Hakanov? That any type of tzitzis fabric will exempt its own talis fabric. From that drasha, you see that he holds that it's not just a wool linen garment, because he's saying that all other garments will be exempted from its own type. So therefore, based on Rava, we would not have known that the chiv deraisa of tzitzis is only a garment of wool linen, because we would have said, the way he says it, that no, you see all other types of fabrics are also chayiv midiraisa. That's why we needed Rav Nachman Yitzchak to say that no, that actually from the Afkol we see that no, just like by Negoyim, a beged means Semer Pishtim, so by Tzitzis that says Akan a big dayhem, it also means you only have in Tzitzis if you're wearing a garment of wool and linen, which there are those who are stringent to only wear wool. When we say wool Tzitzis, the actual cloak itself is wool for that reason of this opinion. But so how does Rav Nachman Yitzchak then interpret Hakanaf? If from Rava you see Hakanaf has to tell you that even other garments, their own fabric of tzitzis are going to exempt. So that, as Rashi explains, it's just the pasuk norm is to say that because it's coming to tell you that the mitzvah tzitzis is by two types of colors. The pasuk is telling you that you're putting psil tcheles, so that's 2 threads of blue wool, and then you have the 2 threads of lavan, of white, because when it's saying it's hakanaf, which is min hakanaf, it doesn't mean regarding the fabric, it means regarding the color. Because generally the garment is white, and we're saying that the tzitzis strings are going to be the same color, which is white. That's what we're learning out from hakanaf min kanav. But regarding the fabric, that is actually not going to be the way Rava says it's going to be. Only regarding Tzemer Pishtim, that's what you need to learn out from the Afkal. So therefore, according to Rav Nachman Yitzchak, that's what we're coming to say from the pasuk of Tzemer Pishtim Yachad V'Gidim Taslach. It's excluding all other materials, not like Rava. Now, however, the Gemara has the following question. Amar Ravacha Bereid Rav Ravashi says Latan Debei Shmuel, and as Rashi explained, the Gemara's question is going on the previous interpretation of Rav Nachman, that he said that when it says Avkol, what we're learning from the Goyim, that also wherever it says Beged, it means Tzemer Pishtim. It means to say the parish of tzitzis, that only a garment of wool and linen is obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis. So then the question is, Maishnal Inyan Tumah. Why is it different regarding the law of Tumah that we said in the previous teachings? The Marbi Shar Begadim that we said, we're including, regarding the laws of Tumah, we said, like by Shratzim, we're going to include other garments, not only Tzemer Pishtim. The Chsiv, Oy Beged, we had an extra word Oy. So he said, what does Oy come to teach you? Oy, as Rav had explained, he says that Oy Beged is coming to include Shalosh al Shalosh, 3 by 3 Tvachim, of other garments. And it's not necessarily something in Tzemer Pishtim. So the Gemara says, here also by tzitzis, I should say a ribui. You're right, it's saying beged. And generally beged is going to be only Tzemer Pishtim, like the way Rav Nachman Yitzchak says. But we have a ribui here in the pasuk. Just like by the laws of Tum by Shratzim, when we had a ribui, inclusionary terminology, we came to include other garments. Here also by the parish of tzitzis, in the same pasuk we brought before, there's a ribui, which we should say to include shar begadim. Because that pasuk in the Varm ends off by saying ma'asher techasaba, from that which you cover yourself with, which that's seemingly unnecessary. Where asher techasaba, what are you saying here that you don't know from the pasuk of it says gedim taslach or abakam kesuscha asher techasaba? You're covering, of course you're covering with it. So that's including something that you cover with. So why are we not including other begadim to say that it's also going to have the obligation of tzitzis? Says the Gemara Hahu, and this is also halacha l'maisla asui ksusum hudasa. It's coming to include the garment of a blind person. That the halacha is that if a blind person is wearing a 4-corner garment, he has to go ahead and put on tzitzis, and that we know from the extra words asher techasaba. It's not like learn the brisa, because it says on the one end it says reisim oisai, that you should see it. So in this halacha, pratlik sus laila, it excludes a nighttime garment. Famous machlek is Rambam and Rush. Is it specifically a nighttime garment or a garment that you wear at nighttime? But be that as it may, Rashi says a garment that's designated for nighttime, like pajamas, that's not obligated in tzitzis, even though it has 4 corners on the garment. So that's what you're excluding. When it says you should see it, a nighttime that you don't see, we're excluding a nighttime garment from the obligation of tzitzis. And that says the Brayis HaToyim. Is that really what you say, pratlik sus laili, excluding a nighttime garment? Or pratlik sus sumo, maybe it's excluding a garment of a blind person, where he also cannot see it. Says the Brayis, no, when the pasuk says asher techasaba, that which it has these extra words of a ribui, of that you're going to cover with it. Harik susam amar. So that's that we're saying that comes to include the like we said, the garment of a blind person. So what am I coming to say? But that you have to see it. A blind person doesn't see. No, pratlik sus lai, that's including a nighttime garment that you also cannot see. So then the question is, why do you see fit to include the blind person from the ribui, and to exclude the nighttime garment from the miyad? Maybe say the other way around. Says the Brayis, no, I'm going to include the garment of a blind person. Why? If I have to pick one to include and one to exclude, I'll include the blind person. Because at least other people could see his garment because it's during the daytime. So therefore, I could qualify a re'isam, they have to be able to see it. The blind person can see it. Yeah, but other people can see it during the daytime. And therefore, asher techasa, that's including, is not rejecting that of re'isam. Asher Dachas is including Ksus Summa, and it's still going to qualify for reason because other people are going to see it. But it might say in the Ksus Laila, I'm going to exclude a nighttime garment, She'ein B'riyetz Lachem, where no one could see it at nighttime. If I would include a nighttime garment from Asher Dachasaba, that would uproot the simple translation of Re'isim. I said you have to be able to see it, which you can't see at nighttime. So therefore, we're saying that from Asher Dachasaba, the pasuk is including Ksus Summa because it is still qualifying for Re'isim Maisa because others could see it. But the pasuk of Re'isim Maisa is excluding not Ksus Laila, but rather that is excluding a Ksus Laila because that no one could see. So therefore, that's excluded from Re'isim Maisa. But in that the Gemara says, but Ve'ema maybe say Asher Dachasaba is L'Rabba Shar B'Gadim. Maybe it's including other garments, not of Tzemer Pishtim, and maybe it's not including that of a blind person's garment. How do you know that it's including that of a Ksus Summa? That you're saying you're not going to include it from Shar B'Gadim because you're using Asher Dachasaba for Ksus Summa. Maybe don't say. Maybe say it's for Shar B'Gadim. So the Gemara, no, Mistab, it's logical as follows. Koi b'tzemer pishtim. We're talking about wool and linen. Like we said, we had the Gedilim Taslach near the pasuk before it of tzemer pishtim. So marba, if I'm going to come to include something from Asher Techasaba, I'm going to include the garment of a blind person that's also tzemer pishtim, that's also wool and linen. But koi b'tzemer pishtim, I'm going to be talking about something that's wool and linen, and marba shar b'gadim, I'm going to include other garments that are not tzemer pishtim. It's not logical. If I'm going to include something, I'm going to include it already from the same fabric, which is that of a summa, and not that of some other fabric, and therefore we have resolved Reb Nachman why he's saying that the laws of tzitzis only apply biblically to tzemer pishtim, but not to other fabrics, and we're not going to include Asher Techasaba because we're rather including something that's also from the same fabric of tzemer pishtim, which is that of a ksusuma of a blind person. Now, Amabaya, the Gemara goes back again to what we started from the previous daf of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. We quoted originally, Abaya said that Reb Shimon ben Elazar and Tana B'Rbi Shmuel are Amr Davar Echad. They're saying the same thing. Now he's going to say a similar type of idea, but from a different angle. It's going to be the same Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Amabaya says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, and the Sumchas, Amr Davar Echad, they're saying the same thing. Now, not the same thing. On that same thing, when he said that Tana B'Rbi Shmuel and Reb Shimon ben Elazar saying, quote, the same thing, he was saying, Abai on the previous daf, which started this whole discussion of Tumah, was saying that they both hold that there's no Tumah of Begadim at all for other fabrics. It's only by Tzemer Pishtim. Here he's saying a different angle that Shimon Elazar is like a different Tana. They're both saying that something that becomes Tameh from a Nega, you cannot use for Schach, even though it doesn't have a law of Tumah, let's say regarding the laws of Tumah's Maga, of if it touches a Sheretz. It's not going to become Tameh. But if it could become Tameh through a Nega, then it's already considered Dava Makabel Tumah, and therefore you cannot use it for Schach. What's these two things what's this one halacha that they're both saying the same thing? So Abai explains. Shimon ben Elazar is Hadamar. This is what we said on the previous daf, which is, what did he say? He said that Kala Yitzim in the Eitz, you could use for, whatever's Yitzim in the Eitz, you could use for Schach, because it's not Makabel Tumah, Chutz min ha-Pishtan. So, the first time we said that Reb Shimon Elazar is like another Tana, like Tana B'Rbi Shmuel was going on the first half. Here it's actually going on the second half of his statement. He says, except for Pishta. Now, the dik is important. He doesn't say chutz mi beged Pishta. He says chutz min ha-Pishta. So it sounds like, what does it mean chutz min ha-Pishta? He's saying that, because Pishta is Makabel Tumah, so therefore you cannot use it for schach. Now, it sounds like even though it's not a garment, even though it wasn't spun yet, like it's just bundles, or let's say it was spun but it wasn't woven yet, that still you cannot use the flax for schach. Why? Now, it's obviously not makabel tumah of shratzim, of begadim, because it's not a beged yet. But it is makabel tumah by negoyim, because by negoyim we find the interesting halacha that a negav tzaras could be even on threads, shasi va'erev. So, Reb Shimon Elazar, in his teaching, is telling us that threads of flax, bundles of unspun flax, although they're not having tumas shratzim, but they do have tumas nagaim, and therefore he says you cannot use it for schach. He's the same thing as sumchas. Why? The time like Linda Bryce, sumchas, he says that if, let's say, someone was sichacha, he used for his schach, bitvi, with spun threads of flax, psula, that's invalid schach. Why? Because it becomes tamei if it has a negav tzaras on it, like we said, because the pasuk says, oy b'shasi, oy be'erev. So as Rashi points out, that, and this is where he's different with Taisus, that the same thing would be not just for threads, it would even be for the bundles of flax that were what's called nislabin, that got heated up and become white, which is the same teaching as Reb Shimon ben Elazar, So why did Sumchas pick specifically Tvi, spun threads, which seems to be a later stage? Sounds like only that, which we'll explain in a second, is Tesis question 2. So that says Rashi, and this is how Rashi learns the next part of the Sugya 2, is coming to say because Tvi, spun thread, becomes tummy right away. Because when you spin the threads, it's the finishing of the work of that material, and you don't need to do what's called, as we'll see in the next Mishnah, and the next Mishnah is quoted, not the next Mishnah, but that from a Mishnah Masechtas Negoyim, that it's only Mishri Yishala when you pull it out of what it was cooking in. Only then will it be considered by the Unan Shal Pishtan as something that's Makabal Tumah of a Nega. But here, by spun thread, Simchas was saying a different Chiddush to say that it because it's Makabal Tumah Negam, so again, that's really the same thing as Rabbi Shimon Elazar, that threads of flax are invalid for schach because as Tumas Negam, it doesn't have Tumas Shratzim, so therefore they're saying the same thing. If something could be Makabal Tumah of only Negam, which is a Chiddush, and Negam has certain stringencies, but if it has because we know that schach cannot be Makabal Tumah, but that's like the general stuff, like from a sheretz. How do we know it's even from the Negam? That's what Rabbi Shimon Elazar and Simchas are both saying the same thing, which Tais asked the obvious question, which he's saying not like Rashi. He says, wait a second. Shimon Elazar says that you could use schach from something that comes from a tree besides pishtan. Now it sounds like we said, even if it wasn't spun into thread, as he brings the Gemara in Sukkah that says if you make a schach out of anitze pishtan, bundles of flax, it's going to be puzzle. So that sounds like if it was beaten and combed, even though it wasn't spun into thread. How could that be the same as Simchas, who's saying it's specifically only if it was spun thread, which a later stage is it going to be puzzle? So what Taisa says, actually they bring in the halacha lamaisa. Shimon Elazar is saying it's rabbinically forbidden to use for schach, even if it wasn't spun into thread, even if it was just beaten and combed, that flax, because it's very close to the next stage of being spun. Now, if it was spun, it's biblically prohibited, since it becomes tamei by the laws of the Goyim. That's the same thing as Sumchas, because when Sumchas said if you make schach with tavi, with spun thread, it's going to be puzzle, he was talking about regarding the biblical law. And Rabbi Shimon Elazar was adding on regarding the rabbinic law, so ultimately they're both saying the same thing. Now the Gemara continues and says, come on. And there's two different interpretations of Rashi. We'll say both of them. But first we'll go in the order that Rashi says. Come on, according to whom does Sumchas say this idea that he says, that we just quoted, that if you make schach out of spun thread, it's going to be puzzle. Because Makabal Tumah Negoyim, that's Kihai Tana. Which Tana, that we're going to shortly quote? Like Reb Meir. Reb Meir says, as we pointed out from Rashi, that's why Sumchas said specifically spun thread, because we said he really agrees to Reb Shimon Elazar that the halacha applies even if it wasn't even spun, even if it's just bundles of flax, but still he said spun threads, because then he's saying a chiddush that's going to become tummy right away after it's spun, even before they did any other processes to that. Who is that's like? That's like Rameh that we're going to say right now in this Mishnah, in Masechtas Negayim, that he says a spun thread can be makabel tumah right away. That's one version. Another version Rashi explains is that we're not asking who is Sumchas like, we're asking who is Abaya like. Abaya said in his understanding of Reb Shimon Elazar, when Reb Shimon Elazar said that you can use the schach from any other thing that comes from a tree, because it's not makabel tumah. Chutz mi pishtan. So the dik Abaya made in Reb Shimon Elazar was, oh, wait a second. Chutz mi pishtan doesn't mean a beggar to pishtan. He was saying pishtan, which means say specifically, even though it's not a garment of linen, even if it's just flax itself. Now, obviously, it's coming to include, even if it's just what called unan shel pishtan, it's just bundles of flax, even if it wasn't spun. So obviously, unan is going to be kabel tumah from the goyim, even if it wasn't spun into thread. And Torah only says, and Torah actually asked this on Rashi interpretation, Torah only says shasiva when it's spun threads. Which Tan is Abai going like? Is the understanding of Reb Shimon Elazar that we see that can be kabel tumah even when it's just bundles of flax, just like Rabbi Yehuda, as we're going to quote here in this Mishnah, which is the other opinion, that he says that Mishi Slabnu, when the bundles of flax are whitened, even if it wasn't spun into thread yet, it's going to be kabel tumah. So interestingly, the two different interpretations of Kaman are actually, when we're bringing this Mishnah, according to the two different versions, it's going to be the other Tana that we're saying who it's like. If we're learning the question is who is Sumchas like, it's going like Reb Meir. If we're saying the other version of Rashi, that it's actually who's Abai like, it's actually Rabbi Yehuda. But let's quote that Mishnah. What is the Mishnah? It does not like learn the Mishnah in Masechtas Negoyim. Mishnah says, Shasi ve'eriv, if you have the warp threads and the woof or weft threads, which are, the shasi are those which you first put on the loom, those are the longitudinal threads you put on first, and then you have the ones that you weave in and out, those are called the warp threads. So these threads are mitam in the gum, which the Torah says explicitly that even though they're not even a garment, just a thread, they can become tumah. But the first opinion says they become tummy from the goyim miyad, immediately divrei meir. Now who's that like? That's like sumchis, that he says once the threads are spun, which is what shasi be'erev are, because once they're spun, you make thread and then you're going to go weave it, which is the next stage of ariga. You see it's tummy right away. That answers command if you say the question is going on sumchis, which is who do you see says this idea that a thread that's spun can become tummy right away. Now, again, but if you're saying it's the question on Abai, it's the next time. Rabbi Huda, he says, well, it depends. It's not that shasi and erev makabel tumah right away. Shasi, the warp threads, is mishi yeshala, is when you pull it out from the vat. Meaning to say, because they used to soak the threads in a pot, in a kettle, to make it white, to heat it up, and when they pull it out, that's the finishing of the process. It's only then makabel tumah. The erev and the wolf thread, interestingly, is miyad, because they did a different processes in those threads, as Tosfos goes through to explain how they would weave it. It was a different, not weave it, to spin it, it was spun differently, either backhanded or the straight. So therefore, there he agrees it's going to become tummy right away. The onishal pishtan and the bundles of flax is mishi slabnu, is when it gets whitened in the oven, when it becomes bleached. So you see from Rabbi Yehuda that even though it's not a garment, even if it's just a bundle of flax, it's mikabel tumah. That's like Abaye who learned Rabbi Shimon Elazar when he said chutz from that pishon. He didn't say chutz mi beged pishon. Even if it's just a bundle of flax, it wasn't even spun into threads, that it's going to be mikabel tumah. That's like Abaye's understanding of Rabbi Shimon Elazar. So that's what the Gemara was saying. But the picture we have over here is saying like that of the second version of Rashi, of Abaye, that where do we find this idea? It's Rabbi Yehuda that says even a bundle of flax is going to be from the time they were bleached in the oven. Now we continue with the next Mishnah, which the Mishnah continues on this idea of our parak of what's invalid types of or valid types of wicks, and specifically this idea of kol hayotzim min ha'etz, as we were just talking about a moment ago. Kol hayotzim min ha'etz, whatever is a derivative from a tree, emad likim bay. You cannot light from it. Now this is a different emad likim bay, as we mentioned from Tosfos from the previous daf. Here we're not talking about like the sap regarding the oil. There's two elements we always talk about in the lamp to light for the Shabbos candles. There's the wick and there's the fuel. So previously we had spoken about regarding you can't light it as a fuel, as the sap from a tree. Here we're talking about as a solid to use as the wick. Anything that comes out of a tree you cannot use as a wick. Now Rashi gives some examples of hemp and cotton, which Tosfos vociferously disagrees with and says it's cotton. Everyone uses cotton as the wicks of the candles, and they actually light very well. So he brings from the read that actually no. The examples Rashi brings are not yotzim in the eitz, they're zeroim. They're considered as seeds, and therefore he disagrees with that. But all other things that come from the tree itself, it doesn't light so well. So therefore it doesn't hold the fuel, you can't light from it. Elapishn, the one exception is linen, is flax, that you could use as a wick. So to another similar halacha from the same wording of chol hayotzim in the eitz, whatever is derivative from a tree, ein mitama tumas oilim, does not contract a tum of oil. What that means to say is, if let's say you make from that thing from the tree, you make it oil, you make it as a canopy over an area, and you have a dead person beneath that, so that canopy from whatever the fabric is, from something that's made from a tree, is like any other house, which you don't have to immerse the oil itself to be metared, because the oil, the house, is not makabel tumah. Only the kalim that's beneath the oil are going to be makabel tumah. As we mentioned in previous Tosfos from previous daf, that although we say, there is tumas oil for the thing over it, here we're talking about that's attached to the ground. So something that's from a derivative of a tree, the oil itself is not makabel tumah. Elapishtan, the one exception is regarding linen, that even the oil itself is going to become tummy, as the Gemara is going to learn out. It says in the pasuk, "V'hizalo oil." It says in the pasuk you have to spray on the oil itself. And the Gemara is going to learn that talking about specifically, as we learned from the Mishkan, regarding that of pishtan. Now, actually, it's the Tosfos over here that asked this question that we had in the Gemara Daf Yud and Alf, also another complicated Tumah sugya, which was the sugya mardeya. We said that, what do you mean, al atzman b'kol shehin, whatever is the kli on top is going to be makabel tumah of oil. So why are we saying here there's no tumas oilim for the thing over it? So as we said, that here we're talking about something that was attached to the ground. So although originally it was a beged, but when it's attached to the ground, it becomes nullified from the Torah of beged. And yes, it's not going to be makabel tumah unless if it's linen, as the Mishnah is saying. Where there, even though it's attached to the ground, the pasuk says v'hiza ala oil. The last point we're going to say over here is the Gemara's question. The Gemara wonders, wait a second, you're telling me whatever is yotzim in the AIDS that either you can't light with it or it's not makabel tumas oilim. The one exception of yotzim in the AIDS is pishtan. Says the Gemara, no, in the pishtan ikri eitz. Where do we see that pishtan, flax, is called a tree? Flax is not a tree, it's a stalk that grows from the ground. How do you know it's not an herb? So says the Gemara, because the Amakrat's a pasuk that says in Sefer Yeshua, it says, V'hi Rachav, that when the spies from the Jewish people, that she wanted to hide them, Helsam Hagagish, she brought them up to the roof, but Titmanim Bepishte Eitz, and she hid them in the trees of the flax, where similarly as you find regarding the Mandama, that says the Eitz Adas was chita, was wheat, that's also not a tree, but the Torah calls it a tree. It grows up like a stalk, like a tree. Therefore, here also, it's called a tree, so although it's not really a tree, and that's what Torah says, actually, you could light the Shabbos candles with pishtan, because it's not a tree, and therefore does light well. But the reason why I have to say chutz min pishtan, ela pishtan, is because it's called the tree in the Torah. Therefore, I have to tell you that it's excluded from those halachas I'm not being able to light with, and also regarding the law of tumas oyhala. Some of these we spoke about today in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Chav Zayin, was a continuation from the previous daf. We had said a Tandabei Bishmol on the previous daf that said that the laws of Tumas Begadim is only by Tzemer Pishtan. Get a different color over here. And so Abaye said in today's daf, our daf started off by saying that, that's mapik me'idach Tandabei Bishmol. That's excluding from the other Tandabei Bishmol, because he has a riboy. He includes shar begadim from ay beged. You see that there is a law of tuma by shar begadim. That's obviously not like that Tandabei Bishmol that says, no, tumas begadim is only by tzemer pishim, not by other garments. Rava says no. They're saying the same thing. Why? According to both of them, when are we including shar begadim is only for 3x3 tfachim. But by etzba'is, that we're saying that they're going to be excluded. So therefore both are true. It's only tzemer pishtim by 3x3 etzba'is, but it's going to be including shar begadim by 3x3 tfachim. Says the Gemara, Rava, you're saying this? But Rava said in the previous daf that according to the first Tandabei Bishmol, he does not hold of any 3x3 tvachim. It was only Reb Shimon ben Elazar that he held that has the halach of 3x3 tvachim. But Tandabei Bishmol, no, he doesn't hold of that at all. There's no tumas begadim. So how could he say this resolution? So the first approach, the Gemara says, yes, hadabei Rav Mahi. He retracted from that statement he said on the previous daf, and he does not hold of that, and he holds like what he's saying over here, that they are saying davrach. Or the Gemara says, no, really it was his student, which was, an eraser, which was his student that said this teaching, and they thought it was Rava, and therefore it's not a contradiction. Yeah, Rava said that they're disagreeing, and his student, Rav Papa, is the one who resolved it. Well, how did Rav Papa resolve it? As Rashi explained, it's not the same way we thought Rava would say. We only would say such a pilug, such a differentiation in 3x3 etzba'is, 3x3 only with Rava, because we thought that both Tandabei Bishmol are talking about the laws of Tumah. Rav Papa says no. The first brisa, number one, the first Tandabei Bishmol, when he says af kol, wherever it says beged, it's only temer pishtim. That's for laws of klayim. But of course he agrees to the second Tandabei Bishmol that we're including for the laws of Tumah shar begadim. Therefore, it's not a contradiction. Of course he agrees. He's saying that av kol is only for klayim. Says the Gemara, no, bedusa. That is totally a mistake, because you can't say av kol, what we're learning out from negoyim, that it's temer pishtim for klayim. Klayim is explicit pasuk, and you can't tell me that the explicit pasuk is only by levisha, but that may be by halah. That you're going to say, I would have thought to say that could be by all fabrics, because it's a kol shekin. If levisha we're having more hana, it's limited to temer pishtim for sure halah. So the Gemara brings Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Yitzchak, he says a different interpretation. He says, av kol is coming to include tzitzis. Tzitzis means to say only a garment of wool and linen are going to be obligated in, so we're talking about the talis, the cloak of wool and linen. That's what we're telling you from av kol, that only there is it going to be obligated in the laws of tzitzis. But by Tumah, again, that's not a contradiction. The first time Bishmal agrees to the second time Bishmal that of course other fabrics are going to include in the laws of Tumah. Says the Gemara, how can you say that? That's a pasuk that says shatnez, and what is shatnez? Shatnez is tzemer pishtim, That's the type of garment that we're talking about in the previous pasuk. And then the next pasuk says gedilim, which is tzitzis. I know that tzitzis is only tzemer pishtim. What do I need an af kol to learn it from the goyim that it's only tzemer pishtim? Says no, you do need it, because you have to exclude from Rava, because Rava learns up the pasuk a din in the tzitzis, in the strings, not in the garment. And based on Rava's resolution of a contradiction, he says that actually biblically, and actually the halacha follows like him, as Tosfos brings, but in Rav Nachman Yitzchak's interpretation, that Rava is saying that no, even other garments not of woolen are biblically obligated. Why? Because he has the following contradiction. On the one hand, it says hakanaf, which is extra words. What's it for? To tell you min kanaf. What does min kanaf mean to say? That the strings have to be the same as the fabric of the garment. But there's another pasuk that says tzemer pishtim. That's what, as we brought that pasuk before, it says tzemer pishtim. So what is it? What do the strings have to be? So you say, oh, that's for all garments, which is from whatever type of fabric it is. When are we saying that it's the same type is, let's say if the fabric is cotton, then you use those same type of strings. Wait a second. You're telling me cotton you could wear as a garment? So you see that the garment is not specifically tzemer pishtim. That's why we needed the avkol to learn out from Negoyim, that we're saying that also everywhere when it says beged, like it says by tzitzis, it says beged, is only going to be tzemer pishtim, not like Rava. So then Rashi just tells us, so what does hakanaf come to say when it's min kanaf? You tell me that it's not like rubber. It doesn't have to be. It's not allowed to be the same type as the fabric, because there's no other fabric besides tzemer pishtim, which you already have a different pasuk that the strings are tzemer pishtim and the fabric is tzemer pishtim. So what does that kind of come to say? That's only Rashi explains for Rav Nachman Yitzchak. It tell me the types of coloring of the strings, because besides for tchelis, there's also another thing that is min hakanaf, which is white, because the fabric generally is white. Now, then the Gemara asks, wait a second, what about including other begadim for tzitzis, for the garment? Because it says a pasuk of asher techasaba. So just like by oi beged that you use for the laws of tumah, so too you should say regarding the laws of tzitzis, it should be including it from asher techasaba. It says no, that's including ksusuma. It says reisim oisai. That's memayit ksus laila. And we'll pick this to include and this to exclude, because at least by summa, others could see it. So it's not a rejection of reisim oisai. Now, but why don't we include from asher techasaba shar begadim? Because it makes sense if you're by tzemer pishtim, you include tzemer pishtim. We're not going to be by tzemer pishtim, include another garment from a different type of a fabric. Then we had Abaye who said, Reb Shimon Lazar and Sumchis, also Amr Davar Echad. But here it's from the second half of Reb Shimon Lazar's teaching. They're saying the same thing. What's the same thing? That something that's makabel only tumas nagayim, not, let's say, of a sheretz, of maga. It's not going to have all those tumah. Still, it's going to be possible schach. Like we said, schach has to be migarncha or mikvecha, has to be something that's from pseilis garin v'yakev, has to be not makabel tumah. That's even if something's only makabel tumah as a nega, which is more stringent, even if it's just that, it's going to be possible schach. Where do we see they say the same thing? So Shimon Lazar is the teaching we said before. We said you cannot use schach from pishtan, and he didn't use the words beged. Oh, wait a second. That means to say even if it's just bundles of flax, even if it wasn't spun, it's not a beged, doesn't make a difference. Even though there's no tumah sheretz, because it's not a beged, obviously no tumah sheretz, but because by shratzim we don't have the chiddush of shasiva erev, that's only by a nega, still you can't use it for schach. That's the same thing as Sumchis, who said that even if you just spun, you have spun threads of linen, it's possible schach, so even though it's not a beged, still you see, if it just has that of a negaim, it's going to be possible for the schach. Now, then the Gemara says, Kaman. Now, there's two interpretations in Rashi. Who do we mean? Are we going on Sumchis or are we going on Abaya? So we bring the Mishnah Masechtas Negaim. The Gemara's answer is, if it's going on Sumchis, that who is Sumchis going like when he says that even if you just have a spun thread, it can be Makabal Tumah right away. That's like Remeir, who he says that threads, which he calls Shasi and Erev, which are just spun threads, Amatame B'Negoim right away, even before it was even heated up. So that's like Sumchis, who says spun threads right away, Makabal Tumah. Or the question was going on Abaya. Who is Abaya like in his interpretation of Reb Shimon ben Elazar? that he says, it doesn't say beged shel pishtan, it just says pishtan, that even bundles of flax are really going to be mekabel tumah. That's like Rabbi Yehuda, who when he talks about the bundles of flax, he says mishay slabna, just when they get heated up, even if it's not spun, it's still going to be mekabel tumah of a nega. That who is who Abai is like in the interpretation of Shimon Lazar. Then we started the next Mishnah, which says two teachings of kol hayotzim in the eights. One was that whatever's a derivative from a tree you can't light as a wick, except for linen, which is a good wick. And also we said that whatever's yotzim in the eights is not mekabel tumah itself. The oil itself is not mekabel tumah. The only one exception is pishtan. Now, why are we excluding pishtan from these halachas, which are only for eights? Flax is not a tree. The reason is because there's a pasuk that says he alasim agaga v'tipna pishna eitz. We see that pishtan in the pasuk is called an eitz, and therefore we exclude it from the halachas of eitz, even though really it's not an eitz, and therefore that's why Taisa explained you could actually light a wick from linen because it actually does draw the oil. It's not like all other things. It's not really a derivative of a tree. Thank you to our end time for hosting us.